It's you were driving in Los Angeles in, I think, the late 70s.
Yeah.
And you felt a pull to go over to a Catholic church. And you went inside and you told a young priest there that you had found God. Now, I get the sense that, you're not, going to church every Sunday or sort of praying in a conventional way. So what is God to you?
Well, it's a touchy subject, isn't it? Because I'm religion and, but what happened that morning when that voice said, it's over, now you can start living, and it has all been for a purpose. So don't forget one moment of it. I knew that was a power way beyond my understanding. Not up there in the clouds, but here, in here. So I chose to call it at that moment God. Yeah. I didn't know what else to call it. Short word God, easy to spell.
This is the actor Anthony Hopkins, who is explaining an experience that he had in the 70s when he sensed something. He sensed a voice in his head, and as you heard in the interview, he called that thing God. And I want to point out a couple of things that he says in the video, and then open the scriptures to see what are we supposed to do with experiences like this. What does it mean about God and God revealing himself to us when it comes to spirituality in our day? Anthony Hopkins says here that it was such this profound experience to have a voice speaking to him to go and do this particular thing. It had a message for him. And he says that it was a power beyond himself, and yet it was within himself. So it was transcendent, and it was, otherworldly, it felt to him, something he couldn't understand. But at the end of the day, it really was just in him. It comes back to the self. And he said he didn't know what else to call it except God. Well, this is actually pretty run-of-the-mill. He says it very eloquently, and I'm sure it was a meaningful experience to him, but this is pretty run-of-the-mill in our day for what we do with spirituality and our definitions of God. We always come back to me. And when we feel like we've had some kind of an experience that had to do with, that was related to a God figure of some sort, we end up bringing it back to us, to our sense of the divine, to our experience that we had that really could be interpreted in a number of different ways. Well, it is true that God is transcendent, but God does not begin in us. God is God. He's outside of us. He's the creator. He made us. And any experience that we have that is actually an encounter with God has to start with that truth. Now, that said, there is an idea and an understanding in Christian theology that says that all people have some kind of sense of God. The great reformer John Calvin said this. He said that all people have a sense of the divine. And that can be taken in a whole bunch of unhelpful, unbiblical ways. Calvin simply meant by that since we've been made by God, and God has revealed himself to his creation, we all have a sense of him. That's why even non-believers, people who never open the Bible, people who are rebels against God, sometimes still create great art, sometimes are incredibly useful in the inventions that they give to the world, discoveries that they make. They may not know God in this saving relationship, but they have a sense of the divine. Where do we get that in Scripture? We get it at least from Romans chapter 1. The Apostle Paul says in Romans 1:20, for his, meaning God's, invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made. So they are without excuse, meaning humankind is without excuse. For although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man and birds and animals and creeping things. Therefore, God gave them up in the lusts of their hearts to impurity. It all ends up turning back to the creation, which is what idolatry is. We trade in the transcendent, invisible God for idols that we can see and that we want to bow down to. But it ends up coming back in the end to ourselves. We are given up to the impurities of our own flesh, the desires of our own hearts, the things that God has condemned. We end up going back to those things, and we call it spirituality. We call it religion. We call it whatever it is that we want to call it. But Scripture says that there is an objective reality, and that reality is called God. He is reality itself. And this great and gracious God has chosen to reveal himself to us in the created world. We can see him. We actually can encounter him. But we have to encounter him on his terms, not our own, not in some experience like the one that Anthony Hopkins is describing there, that is purely subjective, and then reduce it down to something that's just happening with us, but now we're going to call it God. The right is totally on God's part. He has the right not only to tell us who he is and define who he is, but to reveal that to us. That is who we call God, and he's revealed to us not only in the created things, but most importantly, in the Holy Scriptures.